Hi, this is Irma again. I'm coming to you tonight with part three of my series about brain tumors in children. Um, the brain tumor that I'm talking about specifically is anaplastic astrocytoma. Then the last one we left off with about well, we had visited the doctor's office and uh, we had gone from not the doctor's office, I'm sorry, but the hospital in our town, and we had gone from the hospital to another state, another city at a hospital called Shands. And the last thing we were told was that our son had a large mass on the top of his head, inside his brain, very large and very deep. Now, tonight, title is What Happens When You Find Out That Your Son Has a Brain Tumor, series part three. Okay, just looking at my notes because I want to make sure I say everything. Um, After we were told that night, the first night when we were at the second hospital, that our son had a large and deep mass on his brain, um, we fell asleep. We just didn't fall asleep. We had to find a place to sleep because in that city there is a large university, the University of Florida, and they were having their graduation at the end of the week, and there was no room at any hotels for us, so we had to sleep in the hospital somewhere in the waiting room or in the Ronald McDonald guest room where there were lots of other people who had flown in. Their children were flown in for trauma or into the pediatric ICU unit. Excuse the noise in the background. My husband knows that I'm recording. He just woke up. Anyway, um, so that next morning, we were able to meet with the doctor. The doctor was a neurosurgeon, a pediatric neurosurgeon. I had never met a pediatric neurosurgeon before, and he wanted to know the full story of what happened with our child, and we were able to tell him what happened the previous day. As we were talking to him, he was examining him, and he had told us that he would do surgery the next day, but after examining our son, he decided that he would do surgery that same day. When he said, I'm going to do surgery that day, um, they started scrambling around and getting everything in place for him to go right into surgery. He told us that the surgery would last for 5 hours. So, so we um, all of this is still we're still in shock from the previous day when our son passed out at school. So us being Christians, um, we wanted to pray with the doctor. I asked the doctor could I hold his hands and pray with him, um, so that he would be able to do a wonderful job in surgery on our son. Um, this is a man that I'm just meeting, and he's going to go into surgery with my son. He's going to go inside my son's head and repair damage from a tumor. And also, we found out later that our son was bleeding on the brain. He had had a stroke as well. So yes, I did. I wanted to pray with him, and he allowed me to pray with him. He allowed my husband and I to pray with him, and that was good because I believe in the power of prayer, and I do believe in healing. Our family, our whole family does. So they prepare him for surgery. We went as far as we could down to surgery and to the doors where we could not go any further. And that was the worst feeling that any mother or father could have ever experienced, is going as far as you could with your son, watching him being taken off into surgery and not knowing if he's going to come out of surgery, because the doctor already had told us that he may not survive the surgery. 5.5 hours was a very long time. Some of our friends came and sat with us during that 5.5 hours. We had people that we knew who were praying for us and our son. Um, I that day I developed something called Stop, Drop, and Pray. I'd never heard of anything like that before, but that came into my being, and and that's what I did when we were with the people who were visiting us and waiting for this surgery. While the surgery was taking place, I would just feel an urgency to pray. So I would excuse myself from the company that were there for us. So that was my stopping. And I would go into the bathroom, and I would drop on my knees and I would pray. So that was my thing for that for that time during those 5.5 hours. I did that several times. I stopped what I was doing, stopped the conversation or whatever was going on among us. I stopped, I dropped, and I started praying. And so that really helped me. My We were being comforted by our friends because this was a lot to find out on day two. Day one was already a lot, and that was with us. Now we had day two. I have some music in the background. Um, so um, after this surgery, the doctor came out and he said that the surgery went well, and of course, I was alive, and we were so ecstatic. We were so happy that he was alive. But the doctor said that the next few days, weeks were going to be very critical. He said he still did not anticipate um, living. Um, and we asked him, did he get all of the tumor? And he said, he didn't say yes, he didn't say no. He said, I removed as much as I could, as safely as I could. So that is what he said about the tumor. It was a bloody mess going in because he was already bleeding on the brain. And and he went into surgery with that. So we weren't even sure if he had extracted all of the um, the tumor with that action. Um, but we prayed continually for the best for him. By now, we had people praying all over the world because his teacher knew people in Africa, and other people knew other people, and the news was just spreading like wildfire about our son, because I come from a very, very large family. I'm one of 76 grandchildren of my grandparents, and we're scattered all over, all over the planet, lots of us, and that's just on my mom's side. My dad's side is smaller, but large by comparison of other families. So lots of people were praying for us, and lots of people were praying for our son um, and our family. Um, when we left the school, I had another son who who was 2 years older than Sean. I completely forgot about him. The principal and his wife um, kept him that he stayed the night with them that first night, and our daughter um, our second daughter had decided that she was not going to attend school, college that semester. So she was home, and that was really, really great. We were so happy. So she said that she would keep him at home, keep him, take him to school, and take care of our our 10-year-old, our son who was ill. He was 8 years old, and my family, my mom, as I said in the earlier video, was in her late 90s, and then my sisters and my family were very, very concerned, and they came to the hospital where we were as as often as they could. After the surgery, um, our son was in recovery for a good bit of the time, and then when they brought him back to the room, he was swollen pretty large. Um, but I was informed that when children have surgery, they tend to swell after surgery, and it takes a couple of days, and the swelling subsides. So that was information. That was among the thousands and thousands of pieces of information that we were learning. That was one piece of um, information that we didn't know, but we were starting a journey of learning a lot. Um, so we were in the pediatric ICU, and we were waiting for Sean. Our son's name was Sean. We were waiting for our son Sean to awaken. Um, Day one, he did not wake up. Day two, he did not wake up. Day three, he did not wake up. Week one, he did not wake up. Week two, he did not wake up. Week three, he finally woke up after week three. Excuse me. Um, they were coming in and they were pinching his arm along underneath his arm, and he was had lots of bruises from them pinching to see if he was moving or not. Um, so we found out that he did have some paralysis on the left side of his body, and that when he came out of the coma, um, all we saw was his head wrapped up. All that was showing was his eyes. That's it. They asked us if um, if we could bring some pictures in because they all they could see was his body and his eyes, so they didn't have a clue of what he looked like. Some of the nurses were asking, "Well, what's his personality? What does he look like?" So we were there, and we did bring some pictures in, and we started telling them about his personality because he was a fun boy. He was 99 pounds in the second grade. So he was big. He loved to eat. He loved to run and play. He especially loved fishing because my husband loves fishing, and he had a love for fishing just like his dad. So he loved fishing. He loved playing with his big truck, and he would put a trailer on the back, and I would have to dig a hole in the backyard so that he could pretend that he's back in his truck with the trailer, and the boat had a boat on it too, into the lake. So lots of times I would dig a hole. I would go and get water and pour in the hole so he could pretend that he's back in his truck into a lake, as he would see his father do so many times. So he loved fishing at 8 years old, and it was a fun boy. Um, we had lots of laughter with him, and he had a infectious laugh. He would just lean back and have such a big belly laugh. And when we first heard that laugh, and just a little baby when he was about 1, we looked at each other and we like, where did that laughter come from? We had never heard a child laugh so loud and so strong, but it was such an infectious laugh that he had. So we were in this hospital for 4 weeks, and Sean was in room 444 for 4 weeks. So we met lots of families on the floor. I was really surprised at how many children in that hospital had brain tumors on that floor. There were several of them. The other interesting thing about that was the fact that most of those children were 8 years old. If they weren't 8, they were 7 getting ready to turn 8, or 8 getting ready to turn 9. I asked the oncologist what was going on with 8-year-olds and brain tumors. And she said, I don't know why so many children on this floor have who are 8 years old with brain tumors. She said the average age for children with brain tumors is 5. Uh, Children with cancer is 5. And our son was 8. We learned later on that he did indeed have a stroke that day, and that when the pathology report returned, our son had a grade 3 um, cancerous brain tumor. The name of the tumor uh, is an anaplastic astrocytoma. Anaplastic astrocytoma, which means that that is a grade 3 cancerous brain tumor. The doctor said that it was a very aggressive brain tumor and that it would be back in 2 weeks. Um, so we that information we could not even accept. We've already had gone through a lot. We just now we're going living our life there at the hospital hour by hour. Um, During that month, my husband returned to work, and it was an hour and a half drive. So he would go to work for 3 days, and then he would come back to the hospital where I was. I stayed there at the hospital for a number of days because the Ronald McDonough House, which houses families with children in the hospital, if they have space, they did not have any space. So I stayed in the hospital in the room with our son, and till one day we got a call from the hospital social worker, which was the scariest call, and because we had both driven back home for a few hours about so that I could get some sleep. That was the only time that I was home for a number of months. As I go on, I'll tell you a little bit about that further. But I was home for about 6 hours. And on the way back to the hospital, we got the call from Ronald McDonough House, but it was from the social worker from the hospital. And she said, Mr. and Mrs. McNeil. And we thought that we were getting a call saying that our son had passed. And we were about holding our breath. And she was like, "What's wrong?" And we like, what's going on?" She goes, "I'm just calling to let you know that Ronald McDonough House called, and now they have a room for you." And we were like, "Phew." She said, "What happened?" We told her that since she was calling from the hospital, we thought she had some very bad news for us. And she apologized for not saying immediately that she was social worker from the hospital for Ronald McDonough House. So, so that was our four first 4 weeks. we had no idea that we were going to be at that hospital for 4 weeks. And so many people from our church came to visit Sean, and Sean was a part of our children's church. So our children's church pastor came, and one Sunday she brought a whole van full of children. Even some of the visiting children that Sunday wanted to go and visit Sean, and their parents were like, "We don't know who Sean is, so you can't go." But so many people were coming to visit him in the hospital from our church and from our family that the hospital staff were saying, "Who is he? Is he a celebrity kid?" So one of the nurses decided that she would name him Mr. Celebrity. We got lots of cards, and people were very generous to us with their prayers and support, and we were so grateful for all the things that people did. The hospital informed us that there was a website so that we wouldn't have to answer so many calls. We could establish a website through the caringbridge.org, and we did. We set up a website called Sean's Truck Stop because Sean loved trucks so much. So I decided to name it bridge.org /Georgia /Sean's Truck Stop, SEANSTRUCKSTOP. So um, we we were there for 4 weeks. Just the third week after Sean woke up, it was couple of days later. I was going down to the cafeteria to get something to eat, and I noticed that um, there was a spot on Sean's stomach, just a little small round spot with some pink bumps in it. And I made a mental note of that when I went down to eat. I said, when I come, I inform the nurse of what I see here. I came back from dinner from the cafeteria downstairs in the hospital. Sean's whole stomach was covered with red bumps. So the nurses were asking me what all was he allergic to. Well, nothing that I knew of. He never had all of these very strong antibiotics that the doctors give you after sur- surgery. So he had never had that type of medicine before. The only type of medicine he'd had before was when he had tubes put in his ear, and there was no reaction from that. So we were to fly to a second hospital back in Georgia because we were out of network. We were from Georgia and we were in a hospital in Florida. So they wanted us to get back into network, and they were going to fly us to a hospital in Georgia. But because Sean had a rash, when I found that rash and I told the nurses about it, as I said, his stomach was completely covered. Um, it was time for me to go to the Ronald McDonough House for that night. And they said, don't worry about it. We're going to give him some Benadryl. And we're also going to put something on the rash on the external of his body, his stomach, trunk area of his body. When I came back the next morning, they said he would be okay. It would probably be mostly gone. When I came back the next morning, he was covered from head to toe with the rash, pink bumps all over his body, and his nose was out to here, and his face was way out to here. His earlobes were really big. The palm of his hands were big, and his feet were big. He was just swollen. He was swollen up so badly. And they said, we cannot transport him to another hospital with this problem. We have to figure out what is going on with him. So, so we spent another week um, trying to figure out what caused the rash. um, and what that situation was. Um, as it turned out, all of the heavy medications the doctors give patients after surgery, Sean was allergic to all of them. So they said this is really bad because if he ever has to have surgery again and he's allergic to all of this medicine, um, that's trouble. So while we were in the hospital, um, everyday life goes on, and Sean was in ICU, and I decided to give him a kiss on the lips. I remind you that he was 8 years old, and 8-year-old boys do not like their mothers to give them a kiss on the lips. So I gave him a kiss on the lips, and um, he stopped breathing. All of the monitors went down, down, down from whatever the numbers were. It went all the way down. He was in the midst of flatlining. And the ICU nurse ran in and she goes, "What happened? What happened? Did you all touch him? Did you take the beads off his heart? What did you do?" And I was like, I didn't do anything. I just kissed him on the lip. She was like, "Whatever that was, don't ever do it again. That was real." Well, she did tell the doctor, and the doctor came in and he said, "What happened?" And I said, "I just kissed him on the lips." And then he made a little face like, and then all of the numbers started going down very quickly. Um, so he said, "No, that couldn't have happened. Something else happened." He said, do that." So I kissed him on the lip, and sure enough, all the numbers started going down, and doctor's like, "Stop, stop, stop." He said, "I believe you." He said, "I've been a doctor for so many years. I have never seen a child stop breathing because his mom kisses him on the lips." I was like, "Well, he is 8 years old. 8 years old boys do not like the moms to kiss them on the lips." But that was a little humor that happened. Later on, I was passing a group of nurses, and they told me they were talking about me, and I said, "What were you all saying? What are you saying?" And they said, "Oh, we named you Mom with the Deadly Kiss." So when my husband got ready to go home the next morning to go to work, I got ready to kiss him goodbye. He said, "Oh no, don't kiss me. Don't kiss me. Remember your new title. You're the mom with the deadly kiss. So no kisses from you." But while Sean was there, he was he was he was on a ventilator for a few days, and he came off the ventilator. Um, he did have to have a trach, so he had a trach, and he also had to have a feeding tube. So we came there with no tubes, knowing nothing about tubes, uh, and we left there with two tubes. We finally left on a twin engine Cessna, uh, and they flew us from Gainesville, Florida, to Atlanta, Georgia, which was an hour and 5 minutes. And I've flown on a twin engine Cessna quite a bit, um, quite quite a number of times. So I was very used to a small plane, a very small plane. And this plane was bigger because it did have at least 6 seats in it. Um, the pilot, the co-pilot, two nurses, myself, and Sean, and on a bed where his head was almost in my lap. And the, excuse me, the last 2 seats was for our luggage. So um, it was a rough flight, bouncing, gliding, and the whole time, so it was very rough flight, but I was with my son. So um, my son needed to be on that flight, and I needed to be with him. I was very happy when we landed in Atlanta. So this ends this session. This went a little longer than I anticipated. Um, Session 4 will be the start of um, our journey in Atlanta at the Children's Hospital of Atlanta. So I will end here. Thank you for watching. Have a great and restful night. Good night. Ooh, sorry about that.